Alright, hey everyone, this is TMT Coco here. I wanted to give a bit of an introduction into the LAT, the LAT class Light Anti-Tank. It's a relatively easy kit to get. You get 3 fire support rolls per squad, so you usually end up getting 1 or 2 LATs per squad. Right now I'm the British, so I've got just the law here. So pretty much every faction has 2 light anti-tank classes. In the case of the British, it's kind of a unique case. They have the law for both, so they don't actually have different kinds of launchers, which makes it pretty simple for LATs to remember. So yeah, I figured I'd just kind of go over the kit, tips and tricks, kind of how it works, that kind of thing. So the basic just kit that they have here, a rifle. The British have the option of a high-powered scope or medium scope. The bayonet, the launcher, and 2 frag grenades, smoke, and obviously field dressing and entrenching tool. Now, a lot of factions, instead of giving you grenades, they'll give you a launcher that can fire either anti-tank rounds or fragmentation rounds, like the RPGs, for example. That happens a lot. But the British just have the law here. So first and foremost, most important thing to remember when you're playing LAT or HAT for that matter, is you have a backblast. So anyone that's behind you, like anyone in the relative area in a cone behind you, can take damage or die. So just watch, call out backblast so you don't shoot your teammates. Another important thing is zeroing. It's relatively simple. You just hold down X, use scroll wheel, and you'll see it automatically adjust to whichever zeroing you have. And if you are a fire team lead, you can mark like an enemy vehicle position, something like that. Or you can have your squad lead mark it, and that'll show up at the bottom bar where you see like the compass indicator, and it'll have a range distance for you, and that'll make it a lot easier. Obviously this we know is 100, so we just zero for 100. Point shoot. That one was a little short just because I'm on an angle. I'm not properly aligned. And with most launchers, you just end up getting the one shot, and that's about it. And then we just have frag rounds here. So British, they have really good hat kits. Their LAT kits, they're kind of mediocre. LAT isn't super great for really taking down much other than I'd say like, Logis, some Simirs, some Techies, that kind of thing. But they're good for harassing, and if you have a couple per squad, and if you have a rifleman with you that can resupply you, they're not bad. So overall, that pretty much covers the British class. Like I said, there's really not too much to them. It's one of the simpler classes if you're looking to get into LAT, I'd recommend that. I can switch my team here, and then I can show you the Irregular Militia, which has a little bit different of a kit. So go to light anti-tank, you can see they have 2 here. This screen doesn't really tell you much. If you go to roll loadout, it actually shows you everything that's in the kit. And we can see that these are both the same, essentially, just different rifles. Usually between the 2, the second one will give you the better launcher and just better overall kit. Like you can see in this case, you have a better sight. So if you can, always go for the second one rather than the first. Spawn in here and I'll show you this one. So this kit's a little bit different, like I mentioned. It's one of the ones that doesn't have frag grenades. It just gives you high explosive anti-tank and fragmentation. And then the rest of the kit's the same as the British. So we'll just get into this. We'll take out the high explosive anti-tank. Another thing to remember is every time you pull out your rocket, if you don't use it, like if you quickly want to change to a firearm, you have to pull it back out. So try and account for that, and then obviously when you equip it again, it still needs to go back in. So RPGs have a bit more of a kind of a wind-up time, I suppose. And the zeroing works the same way. It's somewhat crude, but it works. So you can just hold shift to steady and fire. And same as the British, you only get one shot of that. Fragmentation, pretty much useless against vehicles, but great against infantry. You can see the head of it's a lot smaller. But it's the exact same launcher, so you get familiarity with it. You get a group of enemies that are kind of hiding behind a Hasco wall or something like that, or you know that they're just behind a corner, or if there's a hab like this, you can just shoot into it and you're pretty much guaranteed to get some kills. I usually prefer the classes that have a launcher and grenades, but realistically this gives you a lot more range for the same amount of explosive essentially. So that was the Irregular Militia forces. That's pretty much all that there is to them. They're not super complex either. They do share a lot with the Russians because the Russians also use the RPG. But I'm going to switch over now and I'll show some other factions. Go with the US. Alright, so now I'm on a Russian-US variant of Jensen's range. If you're not familiar with Jensen's range, I realize some people might not be. It's a really good spot to look at. There's a few areas here. I'll just quickly go over this. It has helicopters here. You've got some live fire drills in here. You've got vehicles all lined up along here. You can see just about every kind, as well as their armor configurations. And then here we have mortars and other emplacements, and then there's tracks and a bunch of other things all around. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to come in right into the range. So I decided to go with Russian first because I realized it's very similar to what I was just talking about. So I'll be able to show kind of the parallels between the two. So it's the same. You have the AK. I see I picked the wrong kit. Hold on. If you ever need to know how to change a roll on ammo crate, you just want to pick fire support and then LAT. You can see Russia actually has two different launchers, so this is where it starts to get different. But the first, what I would call the weaker of the launchers, is the same as we just saw. You have the same two types of RPG, the only difference is the scope is a little bit more advanced. And also terribly confusing if you don't know how you're using it. So you can more or less ignore the grid if you're just starting out. Logically, you would think that you would want to point this somewhere in the middle, kind of where the large one is, like where I'm pointing at the target dummy here. But it's not. It's the two kind of plus signs up at the top. The top one being 100 meters. Now I'll probably miss and look like a liar, but yeah. So this should... Yeah. I was not holding my breath there, so we cut a little short, but yeah, the top one is 100, and then you're moving out from there in increments of 50, I believe. Might be 100. I can check with this. It's also important to note that these have slightly different drops, because obviously you're firing a heavier warhead, depending on which one you're using. Okay, so these are going by increments of 50, each one of these kind of horizontal lines here. Which means the first one in the grid should hit this vehicle. Yep. Alright. So that's 200, 250 would... Okay, 300 would be here. And after that, you're probably not going to hit much. But yeah, that's the launchers. Pretty much the same. But Russia does have a second class with a launcher that's more like the Law. It's the RPG 26. This is my personal favorite just because it's very consistent. It also has a shorter zeroing. It starts at 50, which is important to remember because most of them start at 100. So if you start at, you have to pretty much re-zero this once you start. But 100 is right at the top. It's a flat bar. The vision around it's really good, so I really prefer this one. And that's 100, and then it goes up by really weird increments, like 250, 150, 150. But overall, it works pretty well as well. And I'll show the states now. States are in almost every layer. Like Russia and the States are the big two. So you're always going to see one of those. So for them, they have the law, which I prefer just because I've used it. But they also have this one, which I'll show here now. This is actually the bigger launcher, so it goes against the pattern a little bit. But every single one of these, it's important to note, all of these have backblast. So you need to account for all of them. So this one, it's just got an iron sight on the side. You can zero it still. They're pretty much all able to zero. And while they do drop differently, as long as you have it zeroed correctly, you're always going to hit the target. And the zeroing takes into account the drop. The downfall of this one, while it does have a pretty good optic on the main gun, there's no grenades whatsoever. All you have is anti-tank. So you have nothing really to go against infantry. You can shoot it at infantry, but it's not going to be nearly as effective. Another plus, I guess, is the field binoculars, which insurgents and Russians didn't have. But yeah, Russia and the States are pretty much what you're going to see the most, so you're probably going to want to get common with those. And like I said, with Russia, they share a lot with the insurgents. So as long as you're comfortable with one, you're going to be fine with both. So I'll switch to the last set that Jensen's range has here. Alright, so I'm with the last set of factions on Jensen's range, which is Middle Eastern Alliance and Insurgents. We've already seen Insurgents, so I went Middle Eastern Alliance. But it's going to seem very familiar again, because their kit is the base RPG and the frag RPG, or you have another familiar one that I just went over, the RPG 26. So exactly the same as we saw with Russia. Just different weapon. I very much enjoy these rifles. The scopes are beautiful. But yeah, that's pretty much everything there is to LAT kits in terms of just firing, knowing ranging, that kind of thing. In terms of gameplay, usually you always want to have a rifleman with you because they obviously have the ammo bags. And if you only have one rocket, you're not going to be able to kill anything, I'd say. So you either always want to pair up with the other LAT, or you just want to have riflemen with you that can repair you. In terms of vehicles, you're not going to do anything to MBTs. You can track them, but even that's kind of tricky. It's 50-50 on whether it works or not. Lighter tracked vehicles like this, you can do some damage. If you're firing at these, if you want to track them, obviously you just want to kind of shoot along here. If you want to hit the engine, they're primarily on the backside. Shooting anything in the direct back is going to give you the most damage because LATs don't really do too much damage. So if you want to disable it, you definitely want to shoot from the back or the sides. Shooting at the front, especially on something like this with just the crazy angle to it, isn't going to do much for you. And that applies for any of these infantry fighting vehicles, stuff like that. You can shoot at turrets to just slow the traverse rate. Some of them you should definitely be able to hit, like this thing. You could damage. But yeah, you can definitely take out a bike. These are a pretty good target, like any of the really light transports. If you're a LAT kit, you hit these, I'd say probably 3 times in good areas, you can take them down. And, I mean, these are kind of just a joke. There's a truck that literally has a tank gun on the top of it. LAT kits are pretty capable with anything like this. like that, and a single LAT can take out any of these trucks, as long as you get a decent shot. These are all very easy to take down, all these techies. And then Logis are a bit tough. You would need a couple shots for sure, but honestly, just as a tip, if you're a LAT kit, you don't want to get super aggressive and just try and kill everything you see. Sometimes it's just better to disable something, not necessarily like an MBT or something where it's still operational. But if you clear out a Logi, like you kill everyone that's in it and around it, as a LAT, you're going to want that big boom. You're going to want to see it explode. But I'd advise against it just because it's one less Logi that they can use. So if you just leave it out in the middle of the map somewhere, shoot out the tires so they'd have to repair it. They can't just have anyone go and pick it up. But don't bother blowing it up. And the way LAT kits usually play, you're not usually going to be right in with the squad. Well, obviously, you want to listen to your squad lead. That's pretty key. But a lot of times you'll be out kind of hunting on your own with a rifleman with another LAT kit or a hat kit. And Jensen's range has a really good tool here that tells you kind of where the armor is on everything, which you can use to kind of determine where is best or worst to hit a tank. So I'd recommend studying this a bit, but honestly a lot of it just comes down to shoot the back, shoot the sides. Don't try and shoot the front. And the other key piece that a lot of people don't really realize, you have an arming distance on all of these of 50 meters. If you shoot anything under 50 meters, you're going to do absolutely nothing to it. What that means basically is you're just wasting your round, and even if you score a direct hit on something light, if it's too close, the warhead on the end just isn't armed and it won't do anything. It will have some area of effect, but see, that did nothing for me, just because I was too far in range. If I was smart, I would have tried this around an ammo crate, and I did, so I guess that worked out. But yeah, I'll show it again. We'll get back out of range here a bit, get past that 50 meter mark. If you're unsure how to range something, if you don't have FTL or anything like that, just zoom in the map. You can see in the bottom right of the map, it shows you 33 meters, 100 meters, and stuff like that, just based on the squares. So you can kind of get a judge, if you know roughly where it is, of how much space you're going to be covering. So here I'm about 1 square, so it's kind of iffy on whether I can actually get 50 with a firing angle. Okay, I should be fine here. So again, make sure you're zeroed correctly and fire at it. So you can see that one actually exploded rather than just kind of pinging off of it. Didn't really do much because, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure if I directly hit it. I see no signs of damage. I'm not really sure. But, yeah, that pretty much covers most of the LAT kit. Like I said, it is a fairly in-demand kit, so you'll want to make sure that once the round starts, you're getting in there and you're trying to get it. I'll make additional videos to cover hat kits, grenadiers, stuff like that that needs a little bit more intro. Stuff like rifleman, I'd say, is pretty straightforward. Once you know the game, you're gonna know what to do. Same with like marksman and stuff like that. You're just using your primary weapon, so it's not that bad. But yeah, if you're interested more, I do stream on Twitch fairly regularly now. I play a lot of Squad, Scriptum, War Thunder, a whole bunch of different stuff. Would really appreciate a follow there or a subscribe here on YouTube. My Twitch is twitch.tv/tmtcoco, and like I said, I stream quite regularly, and if I get enough of a following that wants me to play Squad the majority of the time, I can certainly do that. Right now it's just kind of picking things at random, see what sticks. But yeah, I'd really appreciate the support. If you like the video, leave a like. Any suggestions or anything like that, put them in the comments. Everything helps. and thanks a lot. I hope you learned something.